Good evening. Welcome to the Salem Area Mass Transit District's August 2024 Board of Directors meeting. I am Ian Davidson. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Directors. Maria Hinojosa-Presi, President of the Board, has asked that I chair this meeting. She's attending virtually, and I'll note for the record that we do have a quorum present. To begin our meeting, we'll, as always, turn it over for a safety moment.
Thank you. So, in recognition of a presentation today by our Safe for Us to School coordinator, I have some back-to-school safety tips presented by ADT.com. I have driving, biking, walking, and bus riding tips. So if you drive your children to school, here are some school zone driving safety tips. Be on the lookout for school zone signals and always obey the speed limit. Always stop for school buses that are loading or unloading children. Watch out for school crossing guards and obey their signals. Be aware of and watch out for children near schools, bus stops, sidewalks, in the streets, in school parking lots, etc. And when driving in a school zone, never pass other vehicles, never change lanes, never make U-turns, never text while driving, and avoid using a cell phone unless it's completely hands-free. Some tips for riding your bike to school. Check with the school to make sure your child is allowed to ride their bicycle to school. Make sure your child always wears a bicycle helmet. Helmets can reduce the risk of head injury by as much as 85%. Obey the rules of the road. Always stay on the right-hand side of the road and ride with traffic, not against. Be sure your child knows and uses all the appropriate hand signals. Choose the safest route between home and school and practice it with your children until they can demonstrate traffic safety awareness. And if possible, try to ride the bike with someone else. There's safety in numbers. If they're walking to school, leave early enough to arrive at school prior to the start of class. Use the same route every day and never use shortcuts. Go straight home after school and do not go anywhere else without permission. Always use the public sidewalks and streets when walking to school. Try and walk to school with other students. Strengthen numbers again. Teach your children to recognize and obey traffic signals. Always look both ways before crossing the street and never enter streets from between obstacles like parked cars, shrubbery, signs, etc. Avoid talking to strangers. Teach your children to get distance between themselves and anyone who tries to approach or make contact with them. And if a stranger does approach your child, make sure they know to immediately report the incident to you or a teacher. And some school and public transit bus safety tips. Make a habit of arriving at the bus stop at least 5 minutes before the scheduled arrival of the bus. Make sure your child stays out of the street and avoids excessive horseplay while waiting for the bus. Be sure the bus comes to a complete stop before getting on or off. When riding the bus, make sure your child understands they must remain seated and keep their heads and arms inside the bus at all times. Do not shout or distract the driver, and do not walk in the driver's blind spot, which is the area from the front of the bus to about 10 feet in front of the bus. That concludes my safety message.
Thank you, General Manager Pollock. We'll go ahead and note just one change to the agenda, which is we'll be pulling from the consent calendar the only item of routine business on reportable assault data, and so we'll come to that later in the agenda. Our first presentation for the evening, however, is TransDash with our fiscal year 2024 report. General Manager.
Yeah, so I'll ask Bobby Kidd, our Strategic Initiatives Administrator, to please introduce our presenter.
Good evening, Board of Directors. I'm very happy to be here this evening with James Rubin, a principal at TransPro Consulting, and he's here to provide an update on the Cherriots TransDash.
Thank you, Board and members of the staff and public for having me here today. Going to start by giving you some agenda items, what we'll be covering here today. We're going to be looking at a TransDash dashboard walkthrough, so we'll look at some of the metrics you all are currently following, how those have changed since the last time we reported that to you and what those are looking like. We'll talk about some innovations that we're doing on the dashboard. One is about measuring environmental impact. The other is about job access, so you'll see some very specific numbers today about the job access that your agency agency is providing to different subpopulations in the service area. And lastly, we'll talk a little bit about our TransDash Summit, which we brought together all of the TransDash agencies together back at the end of June to have our first annual summit to look at who's leading in each of these categories, and a little advanced knowledge. You guys won a few awards, and we'll cover that in a few minutes. So we like to leave you with some big takeaways, the 4 kind of key things from the presentation before we dive too far in there. The first is that we've been using tools over the past year to analyze service profiles, census data, and employment data. And we're getting some of these numbers in. The first bullet here refers to about 48,000 as an average number of jobs that are accessible by transit in your service area within 45 minutes. That number might seem low, and it is. It's not the total number of jobs, it's an average. I'll talk a little bit about what that means in a few minutes and why the average isn't so important, but comparing that average amongst different groups is important. Using those numbers, we can show now, really for the first time, how much better access Cherriots provides to low-income workers compared to middle and high-income workers, which is exactly what you want to do as a transit agency, right? Which is providing service to a community that needs it and is very likely to use it. Cherriots placed first place in 3 of the TransDash Awards at our summit. We'll talk a little bit about that, exactly which those awards are and how you all did and compare it to some of your peers. And we'll take a look, another big takeaway is the environmental impact analysis that we've been doing with you. We are very, very close to having results to share with you. Probably within the next couple of weeks, those will get rolled out. So let's take a walk through the dashboard. This is the landing page, and I wanted to cover the key variables, the key metrics that we're seeing. These are the 4 metrics that are being followed that represent each of those success outcomes, so community value, customer satisfaction, culture of ownership, and financial sustainability. Each of these metrics will be covered under the metric page, but just quickly to take a look, under community value, currently we're showing an 85% community relevance. That is a number that's directly from the community survey that you administer to the community members, and 85% of your community members are telling you that Cherriots provides value to the community. That's an astonishing number when you think about it, because I guarantee you that 85% of your community survey respondents are not regular Cherriots customers, right? It's not a customer survey, it's a community survey. So small number who are actual customers, but 85% of them find value in the transit service. So that's a tremendous, tremendous accomplishment. Net Promoter Score is at 55. That's up 6% from the last time the survey was administered. And as a quick reminder, Net Promoter Score is simply asking customers if they're likely to recommend the service to friends and family on a scale of 0 through 10. 9 and 10 percentages, the 0 through 6% is subtracted from the 9 and 10% to give us a Net Promoter Score. That's a range of -100 to +100, so 55 is stellar. Culture of ownership is from the Employee Engagement Survey, and at that point we're at 62%. The 62% represents a combination of 4 different questions that ask about, do employees have the resources necessary to do their job, the support from their supervisors, do they understand their role and the agency's role and what those goals are, and the last one, I always forget the last one, is it a safe environment for them to express their opinions on? And lastly, financial sustainability, you could see currently showing a total cost per hour at 175.69. We just started to measure that one on the dashboard recently, so we don't have a previous result for that. So a deeper dive into the metrics. Let's start on the there we go, sorry. This is just to show you that on the dashboard itself, there's clearly a link to your strategic plan. So folks who end up on the dashboard who want to know and see how this is related can look at that tab. The first thing we want to look at specifically is community value and the metrics that we're following under community value. The first is community awareness, right? Is the community aware of the service that's being provided? And from the survey, we could see a result of 75%, I apologize. The goal there was an 82, so we could say we're, sorry, am I in the right place? community? Yes, yes. So we could see that a 91% of the goal achieved there. Community relevance, we talked about on the landing page, that's at 85%. The goal there was at 86%, so a 99% achievement there. The next three metrics under community value, job connectivity from downtown origin, and job connectivity income disparity, reference what I spoke about a few moments ago, this combination of your service files with census data and employment data. So the job connectivity we covered, that's at about 48K. That's not the most important number. The interesting numbers here are the disparity index and the job connectivity from downtown origin. So 113.7 jobs are accessible from, I think we use the downtown transit center right over here, from that center in a 45-minute travel time by transit. And that's what we'll be monitoring over time, and we'll see how that changes with service changes and with census and employment changes. The really interesting number here is that job connectivity income disparity at 1.4. That's where we look at low-income access, right? The average amount of jobs that are accessible to low-income workers within a 45-minute travel time by transit, and we look at the average number of jobs that are accessible to high-income workers within 45 minutes of transit, and we put one over the other, creating essentially a ratio. The implication of that ratio at 1 is that it's equal, right? Low-income folks are being provided with the same access for work than high-income. Anything above 1 is an indication that lower-income workers are being provided better access. In other words, they have better access to transit and they can get to more jobs in that 45-minute time period compared to the higher income. And you can see at 1.4, that's really representing a 40% better accessibility for your low-income workers using your system than it would be for high income. And that's exactly where you want to be. It's among one of the higher ones of the transit agencies that we look at. Moving down the list here, perceived access comes also from the community survey, right, where the community gauges what they believe the perceived access to transit is. Goal there was set at 82. The actual number was 82, the goal was 85, so that's a 96% achievement rate. Perceived financial stewardship at 39%, the goal was 40, so you're right at that goal. Again, that's from your community survey, and don't be too down on yourself for that percentage number. That's a very, very common finding for transit agencies. I just delivered these results to VIA in San Antonio, and they have exactly that same number. When you ask the public, the community, again, these aren't regular transit users, these are community members, how they think the transit agency is doing with their finances, whether it's Cherriots or VIA or MTA in New York or whoever it is, there's definitely a lot of cynicism brought on by articles and not actual experience or knowledge, but a perception of that. So that 39 is not a very surprising number at all, and you're very close to your goal of 40. And lastly, another sort of census job connectivity rating, percentage of total service area jobs accessible from that downtown transit center, and that's at 91%, which is a tremendously high number of jobs that are accessible. So good news there as well. Those are the metrics we're following under the community value section of TransDash. Let's move now to the customer. Here we go. Customer satisfaction. Two of these revolve around ridership. The first is change in ridership from last quarter to this quarter, a 1% dip. That's probably a wash in terms of the numbers and statistical significance, so we're not too concerned about that. And you can see at the bottom your overall ridership. The two interesting ones on this is customer net promoter score and customer satisfaction. Net promoter score at 55. The goal was 66. And again, I think you developed your goals based on really stellar results from the previous year. So you're at 84% towards that goal. I want to point out that a 55 net promoter score for a transit agency is a tremendously high number. So don't feel too upset that that slipped slightly. It's still a tremendous achievement. And customer satisfaction, where we simply ask customers, how satisfied are you on a scale of 1 to 5? An achievement here of an 84, the goal was 95, so we're at an 88%. I want to point out the weightlifter person there. We just had the Olympics, so it's not because of the Olympics. But we have a weightlifter person there. That indicates that it was an ambitious goal, right? We want to recognize agencies that are saying, you know, we achieved an 85, let's see if we can get an 87. Okay, maybe, right? But here, you were looking for a goal, a really ambitious goal of 87, and we want to, I'm sorry, wrong sheet. You were looking for a really ambitious goal of 84, and we want to acknowledge that that was an ambitious goal. Even if you don't achieve that goal, you're really striving for something bigger and better. So those are the metrics that we're following under the community. This is the customer section. We move on to the culture of ownership. 4 metrics under culture of ownership: employee engagement, which we discussed at the beginning, which is on the landing page, right? The summary of those 4 key questions from an employee survey. Overall employee satisfaction, currently at 65%, pretty much 1 percentage point above your goal, which was 64. Great job there. And then employee internal communication and employees' mission and vision, setting a goal of 46 and 90 and achieving a 45 and a 78. So in one case, we're at about a 98%, the other one at an 87% achievement. And again, the mission and vision was an ambitious goal. That's why we see the strong lifter of weights there. My doctors have told me not to lift weights, bad for the back. Okay. Lastly, we are going to the 2 that we are tracking under financial sustainability. Budget adherence, the actual number there at 90 from this past quarter. The goal was 100% budget adherence, so that's easy math to do. 90 out of 100, that's a 90% achievement there. And total cost per hour is a huge achievement here. The goal was 175 and change. The actual was 175 and change. The goal was to get it at 195. You came in substantially below that goal. That's why that's 100%. And as well, that was an ambitious goal to set. So not only did you set an ambitious goal for cost per hour, you achieved it, which is really great. Okay, I want to now turn towards some TransDash innovations, the things that we've been working on. The first is going to be referencing environmental impact analysis, and just a little bit of a timeline here. We began to look at this methodology back in April 2023. We reviewed this in a workshop in July of that same year, and we started testing this with the cohort with you and Long Beach back in October of 23. We did an initial analysis back in April of 2024. And we are currently right at June 2024, where we did a preliminary results discussion. We expect to have final results on these sometime in the next couple of weeks. And what do these look like? First, net CO2 emissions, that kind of calculation. We would like to work on calculating CO2 emissions avoided. In other words, folks who are shifting modes, who would otherwise be drivers, who are on board your vehicles, how much CO2 is that saving? And also land use impacts, right? So we have to look at how much land use impacts and having the coordination with transit, and again, how that contributes to people using transit and not in their vehicles, and how much CO2 that saves. We also, of course, have to compute how much CO2 is being emitted by buses. Super great to hear that you all have electric buses coming online very, very, very soon, which will obviously have an impact on that. And when we look at that computation, we look specifically at the routes, the number of miles they're traveling, and at the technology, so that we really do understand what those CO2 impacts are. The information systems are passenger trips, vehicle miles, vehicle hours, and the fuel and energy use for each of those fleets and facilities. So we're crunching those numbers as we speak. Some additional metrics of interest: CO2 emissions avoided due to mode shift by effects by mode, CO2 emissions avoided due to land use impacts, we talked about that, emissions per passenger miles of travel, per vehicle miles of travel, and for revenue vehicle hours. All of those are metrics of interest that we're working on computing. Then there are also customer-oriented metrics around this, so CO2 emissions per trip by mode, miles of customer auto travel avoided by mode, gallons of customer auto gas avoided by mode, and customer gas dollars saved. Those, I think, will be really interesting numbers to have to be able to talk about and show the community, particularly those dollars saved. So next steps. We have to gather the remaining data sets for the analysis. We have to discuss the results with your staff to make sure everything looks good, compare those results with some other agencies, and dive deeper into additional areas of transit's environmental impacts. This is, the environmental impacts of transit is one of those things that's currently a little bit in debate in the industry. For years, we used a very simple calculation, which just simply said, all of the people on transit would otherwise have been in cars if they had no other way of getting around. But I think we all know in our hearts that there's a lot more complicated decision-making and numbers that have to go into that. Some trips might be eliminated altogether. Some people would reconsider their destinations. So it's a lot more nuanced than it used to be. And there hasn't been a consensus in the industry around how we're supposed to measure things like congestion mitigation, right? How many vehicles are actually off the road because transit is being operated. In fact, APTA has been advising folks not to do that kind of calculation because it's kind of controversial right now. So we're working on that. We're keeping our eyes on that. We're really looking for industry advice so that we can implement that as soon as it comes down the road. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about the metrics I've been talking about, job connectivity. This is also a really interesting innovation that's come online in the past couple of years because computers and technology have allowed us to do that, right? So what we can do now is we use a system where we upload your GTFS file, right? That's the file that contains all of the information about your service, where buses run, what times they make stops, how long it takes them, all of that stuff. We integrate that with census data, which knows where people live, and employment data, which knows where people work. And once we have all of these data sets, which before these systems existed would just be impossible to put together and coordinate and understand. But now with these systems, we load all of those up, and we then can understand access across your entire service area. What this does, and I'm gonna do my very best to explain it, is it takes your service area and it divides it up into tiny little boxes, and it computes the number of jobs that are accessible from every single one of those tiny little boxes. I'm gonna go to the next page because I think it shows it here. So when you see that number 47,878, that's an average from all of those tiny little boxes across your service area, which include some of the more rural, far-reaching little boxes that are part of your service area. That's why that average isn't a super high number that you might find if you just, for example, did this analysis on the concentrated core of the CBD of Salem, for example, right? You might see even more numbers there, but this includes some of the more rural parts of the service area, and that will drag that number, that average number, down. That number isn't super interesting. For me, what's interesting about that number is when we start looking at it for different groups and different members of the population. And one we already did and we spoke about, right, this idea of low income versus high income accessibility, 1.4 indicating that there's a 40% better access for lower income workers than there is for higher income workers. And we did this for all sorts of different subpopulations across your service area. And I just wanted to take a look at how different subpopulations of folks in your service area are being provided with access. So on top, you see all workers. There's that 47,000 number. Then we divide the worker population by percent of AMI. So the first bar is workers who are earning less than 50% of the area median income, then 80 to 120, and then greater than 120. So low, medium, and high, essentially. And you could see that when we crunch that average number of jobs accessible for lower income workers, it's higher. It's 27% higher. For middle income workers, it's 8% higher, and for higher wage earners, it's less, -9%, which is exactly what you'd want to see, right? You want to see that access being provided to the workers who are earning lower amounts of money who need that access. They're more dependent on transit to get to their jobs. So good news there. Looking along race and ethnicity, you could see that Black or African American workers in the service area have 7% better access to jobs via transit in 45 minutes, as do Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islanders at 19% better access, American Indian and Alaska Native 10% better access, and Hispanic and Latino workers have 12% better access to jobs in transit in 45 minutes than the general population. So all of these numbers, oh, well, there's one more, I apologize, 29 years and younger, so a younger, slightly better, about 4% better access to jobs than the general population. That's where these numbers start to really tell the story. Right? The number itself, that 47,000 number, that doesn't tell a story. But when you start looking at that number compared to the numbers for each of these subpopulations, and you really start to understand how those populations are being served, that's a big part of the story. It's not all service, by the way. I don't want to give the impression that this is all because you've designed your service perfectly to serve these populations. Some of it has to do with the geographical location of these subpopulations, right? I just did this presentation in Albany, and CDT has 2 concentrated African-American neighborhoods very close to their downtown, right? So there are a lot of bus routes that are going through that neighborhood in order to get to other places. So that tends to provide better access. So again, these numbers are reflective of the service, but they're also reflective of the layout of the service area and where people live. Now for some good news. Well, that was all good news. Now for some really good news. We had our first TransDash Summit in Long Beach back in June. Bobby was there, as was some of a great representation from across our TransDash agencies, and particularly great representation from our Oregon TransDash agencies. We had 3 in the house, and we gave out awards. This has been a big focus of TransDash from the get-go, which is that there is no way of telling who's doing good or better or best in some of these categories. We don't do that, right? We submit required data to the federal government to put into this NTD thing, but we never actually look at it and say, like, this agency is killing it in this, and why? Right? That's part of TransDash. It's not just that this agency is winning this category. Why are they doing that? How are they doing that? And what can other agencies learn from that agency in terms of what they're doing? So, first place for Cherriots in 3 categories: highest customer satisfaction in Q1 of 2024. You'll see these results in a minute. I'm kind of leading you in there. Most improved service effectiveness over 5 years from 2018 to 23. And most improved unlinked passenger trips over 1 year from 2022 to 23. You guys came in second in some of the other categories, which was tremendous, right? Highest net promoter score, improved UPT, but it's those first place finishes that we want to focus on. So let's take a look at what those numbers actually look like. Here's the highest customer satisfaction, and perhaps I'm not telling you the truth. You actually tied with Via and San Antonio for this one, but we'll still note that an 84% satisfaction level is tremendous, really, really high score. Think about that on a survey for a moment, right? Customers are getting asked, how satisfied are you with service on a scale of 1 through 5? To give a satisfied rating, they have to give you a 4 or a 5, right? 1 and 2 are very dissatisfied and dissatisfied. 3 is neutral, 4 is satisfied, 5 is very satisfied. 84% of the customers who took the survey said that they were satisfied or very satisfied. That's almost 8.5 people out of 10. We don't usually talk about the half because you can't cut people in half, but we'll round that out. So 8 out of 10. Tremendous achievement there. And you could see so significantly better than some of the other TransDash agencies that are in the mix here for highest customer sat. Most improved service effectiveness. So service effectiveness is a more traditional measure we follow on TransDash. This is unlinked trips per vehicle revenue mile. And we're looking at this over 5 years, from 2018 to 2023. Over that period of time, Cherriots had an 8% increase, right? In other words, more trips per revenue mile, up 8% over those 5 years, compared to many of these other TransDash agencies, compared to every one of these other TransDash agencies, which lost service effectiveness. We all know that in that 5-year period, a pretty monumental thing happened called COVID, and that really had a massive impact on many of our TransDash agencies. Here at Cherriots, it absolutely had an impact, but you were able to deal with that impact, and much less so in the fact that every other agency lost effectiveness. You actually gained it over those 5 years, so great achievement there. And most improved unlinked customer trips. I'm completely getting my... Oh, I can see it. It's okay. A 28% improvement over the 1 year from 2022 to 23. That's the percent change in total number of trips in that 1 year period. And you could see really much higher than a lot of the other Transdash agencies. In fact, Birmingham lost some trips over that year, which is a hard thing to be doing in post-COVID environment. But you could see that you're up there at 28%. That's another gold medal. Gold medal for Cherriots. So as you could see, and these are your honorable mentions. You second place in most improved unlinked customer trips over 5 years, right? The previous was 1 year. This is 5 years. This is highest net promoter score at 55. You just missed beating out Via at 57. I've got a hunch maybe you'll get there next time. Very close. I would call those statistically about the same. And here, most improved job connectivity. Again, those are the numbers that we were just talking about. Over a 5-year period, you could see coming in second there. Lots and lots of agencies have negatives there. Cleveland turned out to have a positive there. Most improved job access from downtown, you could see coming in second there. And most improved low-income job access also coming in second. Cleveland takes the gold there. So that's the end of our presentation. I want to thank you all for leading the way in some of these metrics. I want to thank you for your participation in the summit, which was a tremendous success, very much because you were there. And we really look forward to transitioning this dashboard to be even better than it is today, right? We are working on two things concurrently at the same time moving forward with the dashboard. One is the user experience and the how well it's interpretable from all audiences, right? From you, board members, from staff who are much more technical and precise, right, in their numbers, to members of the public who might surf on it and just want to know information about the agency and know the value that it's providing. So we're going to be working on that. And we're also going to be working with our Transdash agencies on this concept of moving from monitoring to management. We've done a lot of work here getting our dashboard to look nice, to have the kind of numbers and metrics that we want to follow, that we think tell the story. We now want to work with the agencies to say, what can you do with this? You all are doing a slightly better job of that than some of the other Transdash agencies, in the sense that you were an early adapter. You went public with the dashboard earlier on than some of the other agencies have. But it's this process of saying, here are the numbers, here are the metrics, this is our story. What can we do with it? How can we make these numbers better?
Well, Dr. Rubin, thank you for the presentation. Administrator Kidd, thank you for assisting. This is wonderful information, and so I guess I'd open it up to questions. President Hinojosa-Pressey.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President Davidson. I'm so used to back when you were President Davidson. Just a few things. One, I'm really proud of all the work that Cherriots has done, and thank you so much for coming and presenting these awards to us. Just for the sake of the screen and whatnot, could you scooch in a little bit, and so we could scooch the medals in as well for the screen to get to see it? There you go. I just want to make sure that folks know all the wonderful work that Cherriots is doing. I'm really also want to give kudos to the team for an increase on the culture of ownership. I think it really shows like the dedication to the work, not just externally, but internally as well. And then I have a couple of questions that honestly, like, I don't expect to be able to be answered like in this space right now. One of them being, I was wondering if we have the demographic information of the people that responded to the community values survey.
I don't know if you could hear, but Administrator Kidd said that we do have that data.
Okay, I think it would be great to also get to see that a little bit disaggregated, because I would love to see, I mean, I really appreciated getting to see the way that our ridership breaks out and like the kind of service that we're providing to younger folks, lower income folks, and like people of color. But I would also love to see, like, just in the community, how we're charting amongst like different demographics as well. Like, does that also line up? Do younger folks in the community also view us as having like value? And do lower income folks also like see us as having value that don't ride our buses? Things like that. The other question that I had is, I recall whenever we were first talking about tracking a little bit of that like CO2 emission work, there was talk around needing to kind of like take into consideration where it is that we get our electricity for our facilities. Because sometimes, you know, our service providers will be using like solar power, and that could affect also to like how many emissions we're putting out. So that information will also be considered. Yes. Okay. See your head
Yes.
nodding. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And the last thing that I just wanted to say, and thank you, Vice President Davidson, and everybody else in the space for letting me take up so much time with all these questions. But I did want to say that I am so immensely proud of the service that Cherriots is providing, and I'm also very excited to see that we are providing access for a historically marginalized population, folks that are people of color, that are lower income, and beyond. But I also just want to highlight that it's not those folks that just need transit. Everybody needs transit. That's why we're here, right? It's to provide for all sides of the spectrum. And I think I'll leave it at that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, President. Director Carney, Director Laura Midkiff, please.
Thank you for your presentation today. I'll begin with a comment and then a question and then a few more comments. The first comment is a huge, as President Hinojos Presti just mentioned, huge credit to the staff and their leadership and attention and care for their work. I think, if nothing else, that's evidenced in these numbers. I have a couple questions. One question. So, going back to the actuals, goals achieved breakdown, there was another category or column that you never spoke to, which was the national comparison. And I'm not super worried about that, but I would like to know more about that. Is that for actuals? Is it for goals? What is being compared?
So that's compared your actuals. We have to back up, though, just to give you a little bit of context, which is that TransDash doesn't require every agency to follow the same metrics. Agencies choose their own metrics, what tells your story, what's important to your customers and your community. So it's very hard to benchmark all of these metrics with other agencies. So when you're seeing the results that say above or below there, some of those might just be compared to one or two other TransDash agencies depending on the metrics. So that's what's going on in that category.
Thank you. I would just also like to echo, by way of comment, President Hinojos' Presti's request to disaggregate more of the data. I know there's limited time and space, and so that's probably not appropriate here, but for some kind of report for us to engage with more fully. Particularly around the jobs accessible numbers. I mean, for example, the younger demographic that's accessible to jobs, that can be more, without knowing, that can be more or less explained away with the fact that the median age for Latinos in Oregon is 24, for example, or among Pacific Islanders. I'd like to understand better things. I think we would be benefited from understanding more with the data being broken down in many ways as possible. And I think that would allow us to, we're talking about service enhancements, talking about all these things coming up, that would allow us to better plan. Because, to President Hinojos Presti's point, we want to serve low-income communities and communities of color, but transit belongs to all. And I think the goal harbored by the board is to get everyone using mass transit, and but we have to figure out a way to most efficaciously do that, and so I think we benefit from that breakdown at some point in the future. But I thank you very much for the detail that you provided tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Carney, the ACS and census were invoked in this, so I imagine you have questions.
How did you know? In fact, first I do want to echo my colleagues and say, it's a great presentation of data. I know you're just the messenger, and really the thanks goes to our amazing leadership team and really every staff member here at Cherriots for helping us support this work in our community and to receive such accolades. So thank you all very much. My question it really is about data and the jobs access. I'm just kind of curious how we figure that out for the city of Salem. And I don't know that Salem, certainly I think probably you could compare us to Olympia, Washington, and say, well, that's another state capital, and a bunch of those people are probably coming in from, cities north and south to jobs. So how do we reconcile the fact that we have a fair number of jobs that are located here within our and well served by transit, and at this point, many of those parking lots are sitting empty. Like, how do we know that people have access to jobs if a lot of the jobs are filled by people that don't live here, and a lot of the seats at those jobs aren't even filled anymore because I just am looking for, is there any kind of way we need to consider the data differently based on the huge number of state jobs that we have here?
Yeah, I'm not sure that would get reflected too much in the tool, right? Because we're using, it was just an update, I think it was 2021 job loads data in combination with the most recent ACS release, probably last year's. But I think what you're asking is a really interesting and deeper question that requires deeper analysis, right? Looking at not just the jobs, but the kinds of jobs, right? So you're talking about state workers and how that might impact access and who's traveling to where. I keep talking about Albany, but I think that's another really interesting parallel as well, because a big chunk of the workforce in Albany are state workers who are commuting to work, and we had
It just occurred to me you're talking about Albany, New York.
New York, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
There's an Albany here.
Sorry. You can tell the difference because I say Albany instead of Albany, right?
I grew
Albany,
up
New York.
not far from Albany, New York, so it just clicked. There we go.
So
Got
a
it.
very similar question that they had, right, which is that what is the dynamic of our state workforce? How does that impact things? One of the things we found really fascinating in that analysis was that the number of people who are working from home over 1 year really dropped dramatically in Albany, New York, because the state mandated workers to go back to their workplaces that more often than they were the previous year, and you saw that reflected in transit use frequency and all of that fun stuff. So I think to answer your question, we would have to do a deeper analysis to really start understanding the types of jobs and where people are coming from. It's completely doable. Those are the job categories are part of the system and the tools that we're using to look at this stuff. So it's definitely an analysis that we can do.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I don't think I have any deeper, better questions after that.
Okay. Thank you again for the presentation. You kind of skimmed over this, Dr. Rubin, at the beginning, so I want to take some time to, say it for the record. So I'll just read the third bullet point on the third slide. Cherriots placed first in 3 award categories at TransDash Summit. We did get a briefing on that. Wonderful. Thrilled. Those medals look great. But after the comma, outpacing local operators such as TriMet and LTD. I'm just so glad that they're competing with us. It's wonderful that they participated. Really looking forward to future competitions with them. But in terms of non-snarky comments and more questions, for total cost per hour, help me understand what the costs are there. And is this net costs? Does it take into account revenue brought in by fares? Is it total operations? Is it just what it costs to do revenue hours?
Well, I would have to look.
Okay.
I don't have that.
I would love an answer to that question. And then on slide 16, I just want to acknowledge that I'm thrilled that you all are taking into account with total CO2 equivalent avoided, you're considering both mode chip and land use. That's absolutely amazing, and I think that's how it needs to be done. But on slide 16, I understood everything until some of the by modes started showing up more. And so like emissions per revenue vehicle hour by mode, is that applicable for agencies that have both rail and bus? Or does that mean something different?
No, I think that's what it means, but I think in this case, since we're not dealing with rail, it probably is looking at bus and paratransit perhaps independently.
Got it, okay.
Not that, I mean, I think that would be up to you all to decide whether that's of a benefit, right? Breaking those apart,
Sure.
or whether it makes sense to put them together.
Makes sense to me. Okay, thank you. And then for the job access subpopulation analysis on slide 20, does this include wait times? So the reason I bring that up is because where I live, I have the Route 4 that brings me into downtown, and I end up waiting more because it's a 30-minute frequency as opposed to a 15-minute frequency. And so if I miss my bus, my day's really ruined. Is that thrown into this calculation? Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So wait time is considered in that 45-minute travel time. There's a toggle that we can adjust the. How do I put this into? We can adjust the degree to which the agency is meeting their scheduled arrivals.
Sure.
Also adjust what we think is a reasonable amount of time that people are going to show up at a bus stop when they expect a bus to show up 4 minutes later, right? All of those things are included in the computation.
Got it. Wonderful. Thank you. I think that might be it for me. Any other questions from other board members before we move on? Okay. Well, Dr. Rubin, Administrator, just kidding. General Manager Pollock even told me he has a comment. Sorry.
First, Dr. Rubin, thank you for being here and sharing this report. This report is a great reflection, and I think codifies what we believed, but now we have validation on these results. 3 golds, 4 silvers, 1 bronze. Makes me want to be in the Olympics. And, so that is fantastic. I appreciate all the comments from the board. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page because this is a total team effort. And when we talk about staff for me includes the entire organization and to include frontline employees. Sometimes you hear staff, you think office, but this is a total team effort to make this happen. We need every single member of the organization to play their role so that we are getting these types of results. So I just wanted to clarify that, and thanks again for being here. And I will say, Dr. Rubin talked about, we are a bit more active. That's because of Bobby Kidd and her role as a strategic initiatives administrator, cracking the whip, making sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. It's exactly what we need, so thank you.
Dr. Rubin, Administrator Kidd, thank you very much. Okay.
Picture time. Picture.
Are we doing it as well?
Let's get the whole board.
All are welcome.
All the present board.
I'm wearing jeans.
It'll be head and shoulders.
Alan?
No, I'll get up.
Yeah, how are we doing? No, I'm expecting everybody else to come. Alan, Bobby, please. Me too? Yeah, come on, you two.
All right.
That makes me want to see, the medal counts that they have for the Olympics. I want to see the full comparison for all the different
I think
agencies.
we're the Simone Biles of transit.
Simone Biles in transit.
Or Michael Phelps, pick your.
Sure. Excellent.
Pick your superstar.
All right. So next up, we get to hear an end-of-year review from Safe Routes to School. General Manager.
Thank you. So I'd ask Beth Schmidt, our Safe Routes to School coordinator, to please come forward.
These things are never meant for people who are, vertically challenged like myself. Microphones, chairs, everywhere I've been. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me.
Could you maybe speak closer to the microphone? Or actually, Maria, can you tell us?
Oh, I can hear her just great.
Check.
Oh,
I
great.
I
Never
think
mind.
it's on, right? I just need to
Yes.
get closer to it. Sorry. Thank you, Madam President, Board, for having me. My name is Beth Schmidt. I am the Salem Kaiser Safe Routes to School Program Coordinator. Today, I'm joined by my boss, Mike Jeffy, who's also the Transportation Director at the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. So it's nice not to be alone. I have an added buddy with me today. Okay, I can do it, Kira. I promise I can do it. I'm really excited about presenting to you the year-end wrap-up. We worked really hard this last year, and we're really looking forward to this next year. But here we go. Salem Kaiser Safe Routes to School. Oh, here's the first slide. I'm very, very proud of bike safety education and engagement that we got to pilot. We piloted bike safety in 3 schools in Salem, at Chavez and Herritt and Morningside Elementary. So it was nice because we were in North Salem, West Salem, South Salem. We were very lucky to have a wide array of schools, large schools and a small school. We were supported by Cycle Oregon. They provided the bike fleet to us. We had 2 trailers full of bikes so that we could accommodate those large classes. We taught 3rd through 5th grade bike safety in an effort to really target the children who would be going to middle school. Those children typically have more independence and are riding their bikes to and from school, and we have had students who were hit by a car in middle school with Salem Kaiser Public Schools. So it was really about how to target those older children in elementary school ages that would be going to middle school, and they have a level of independence with how they move about their route to school. We also held our first bike bus, so that picture is in there too. Our first official bike bus, which was joined by some members here on your board. I'm very, very appreciative of your support. It was the first official one, but not the last. I am glad to announce that just yesterday, we went and bought bikes for the program, so we can do more bike buses. So Tanya and I actually have bicycles to go ride bikes with students, and I'm really looking forward to this next year, riding more bikes to school with students. I really feel like that's going to be one of our special ways to engage this year. So I think pairing bike safety education and engagement is a way for us to really hone in why you would be taking this bicycle safety and how to practice it, right? This is putting that into practice for the students so that they know when we are riding to school how to follow along with those safety tips. Pedestrian safety, education, and engagement. This goes hand in hand just like bike safety, but this year we worked at, PE teachers worked at really building this into the curriculum regularly, so it will be taught at all the elementary school ages, kindergarten through 5th grade. The top picture there is at Auburn. The students there are playing the game that we developed with PE teachers called Pedestrian First, which I love. And it really just role models how to be a pedestrian and how to be a driver, and really what do the laws look like, and what do you do when a driver doesn't stop for you, and how do you use a crosswalk. It really helps them to play both parts, and I think right now in our community, especially with the traffic fatalities we are having here in Salem, we should have that conversation. How do you be an aware and mindful pedestrian, but also driver? or bicyclists, right? Everybody is on the streets and the roads together. So I think showing the children that they play a part in that is vital right now. So we held 19 walking buses. I'm really proud of that, but this next year it's going to be amazing. So 11 schools participated. We had 4 schools hold International Walk and Roll Day, and 8 schools held Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. Ian was there. Sadie was there. It was so fun. And I have 5+ PE teachers, but I found out that there were more, so I'm really pleased about that. We will be procuring 4 more pedestrian safety kits and adding those into library media so that that's another tool that those PE teachers can use for pedestrian safety. Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. This is really everything. It's my heart completely on my sleeve, my purple sleeve, because Ruby Bridges asks you wear purple. Right here you'll see Grant Community School in 2 of the pictures, and Bush Elementary School. That morning was really fabulous. We had 8 schools walk. I could only walk with 3 since I can't walk with them all at the same time when they walk to school. But they had staggered times, so it was really great to be able to participate with each school. And you know, when you add up the numbers of students, principals are very inclined to be inclusive of the whole student body. And so they, if they have the ability, will wait until all the students are in the building and then take them all out to walk. They did it at Cummings, at Bush, at Lee. Everybody was included. So really, we easily had over 1,000 students walk to commemorate and honor Ruby Bridges that morning on November 14th. Here you go. I know you're ready. I got this idea from a really, really cool Safe Routes to School program, I think in Michigan. And they called it their mobile classroom. They had took first graders out and put them on the bus and took a picture. And I was like, that's so charming. First graders all excited and tiny and on a bus. But really that became, how can we put this to better practice for our students who are Salem-Keizer Public students are free when they use Cherriots. So I was really happy to have the support of Lisa Carignan. She helped me to really negotiate these operators and times and how would we focus on teaching students how to use the bus. So this was a really fun thing. We went to Cummings Elementary School in Washington. That's Washington Elementary School. No, that's Cummings, sorry. And that bus didn't move. But I'll have you know, that was the first time a principal was on a bus, was that bus. But it didn't move. So I promised him that when he does it again next year, the bus is going to give him a ride, right? He knows I'm looking at him, Mr. Pollock. But the kids at Washington Elementary got to go on amazing rides, and that was so fun. We had children who had disabilities who had never been on the bus before, and we're delighted that when the bus came up, it went down and the wheels went down, and they were very fascinated and so happy to be a part of that, to bring their wheelchair on the bus, and they had no idea that that was an option for them. So again, the teacher at that school didn't know that the children were free. Even though you publicize these things and we talk about these things, unless they have some sort of exposure, it's challenging to know about them. So this was really fun, and we look forward to doing it again. We'll probably just focus on 5th grade this next year, because it's the same thing. You're really focusing on the children who are going to be independent when they go to middle school or high school, and they'll be expected to maybe be away from their parent and have that ability. So we will be working again to target elementary school ages kids in the 5th grade and do this again. We'll see how many times and who signs up. Remember, I don't have a lot of control over which schools sign up. Those schools contact me, and then they direct what engagement or what they would like done. So I'm really excited because Salem-Keizer Public Schools has, we updated our partnership plan and our program overview this year. So that was a really nice way to really define what the program will look like and how we can further do education and engagement. Yeah, let's see. We practiced getting on and off the bus. We talked about how much it cost. That was so entertaining because children don't know about these kinds of things. Lisa did a marvelous job just talking about the etiquette and the how-to, and letting children have this opportunity to learn about it, because a lot of kids, right, never been on the bus. Oh, I was mostly proud of the children. You see the picture of the kids who actually wanted to get the bike on the bike rack and off the bike rack. It was great. I didn't expect them to be so interested in it. They did a great job. And even I didn't do that, so I need to practice that myself. It was a beautiful day. We rode the bus and got stuck by a train, which was entertaining. The students, it was just fun. It's nice to go do stuff like that kids they can't anticipate. Ooh, I'm at the end. Thank you. But one thing I wanted to say about the bicycle safety education and the bike bus. I feel like when I talk about students being multimodal and that they have the freedom to choose how they move about their world, when we highlight things like taking the bus or riding your bike or walking to school, we are helping them to see that they can do these things independently, and that when they choose and they have that level of independence, they can feel confident in themselves. But oftentimes students don't get to choose how they get to and from school. I think taking the opportunity to educate them while they're in PE, they're already at school. It's an automatic, right? They get to ride a bike. A lot of children have never even been on a bike. When you're talking about exposure to students, that is my biggest thing. If they've never been on a bus, if they've never been on a bike, if they don't walk to school, how are we doing this, right? So I'm really excited for this next year. I'm hopeful that I can go to more schools and talk to parent clubs and really get parents involved. Maybe they too will want to come to school and help teach their student how to ride a bike, because maybe they don't have a bike, or where do they ride their bike? So I'm really proud of all the work that we did, and I'm grateful for your partnership and support. I wouldn't have been able to do a lot of things without your help. So I continue to be just happy for everything we get to go forward with, and you supporting me in the grant application. I really appreciate that. And we got it, so that's good. And yeah, should I share anything else?
I can add something.
Please.
So first of all, I'm very fortunate to have Beth as my coordinator. If I could clone her, if I can get two Beths, I would, because this is the second biggest school district in the state, and having only Beth and a part-time program assistant is more challenging than you can imagine. With 42 schools, not just elementary schools, not counting the middle and high school. And you can tell the wonderful programs she's developed in just in the short amount of time she's been here. But really, to really serve the school district and the students, we need to find a way to, like I said, get more resources, clone Beth, whatever it is. And up to now, our MPO has funded this program, and we got a small grant from ODOT. But going forward, we're going to need more funds from the MPO, matching funds. And it would be wonderful if ODOT somehow got more funds to this program. Now, you probably know the Safe Routes to School program was funded by the state legislature, but it's still pretty limited funds. It's this last cycle, they had money for infrastructure projects. I forget the amount, but it's the $25–30 million cycle. On the education side, they only had $1.5 million for grants for the whole state. And so the grant we got was the highest amount they provided to anyone, and it was still only $150,000. So it doesn't cover much of our costs, but everything helps. So we're going to count on the MPO to keep funding this program after our money kind of stops in June 26. So starting in June 27, we're going to need those funds. And then if the state, in some future bill, if it's next session, could find a way to squeeze a little more out for the educational side statewide, that would be very helpful, because they don't have a lot of money and they have a lot of people applying for these grants. They got a lot of agencies like us off to a good start with some funds, but now finding ways to continue and grow the program is a challenge. And we're looking for any opportunity that comes up, any kind of partnerships, as Beth said, any private partnerships, that would be wonderful. So that's the challenge we have in front of us. I should also just quickly mention, as Director Carney knows, we're developing a safety action plan to deal with the increase of fatalities and serious injuries. And one of the strategies is the Safe Routes to School program, continuing that program. So we're teaching kids at a young age how to be safe, first as walkers and bicyclists, but hopefully that transfers to when they're adults and they start driving and they're more cognizant of the dangers out there being a driver. So I'll stop that and say thank you.
Thank you, Coordinator Schmidt and Director Jaffe. Any questions or comments for them? Please.
Thank you, Vice President Davidson. And thank you, Beth, for being here. And it's good to meet you. Couple questions. First of all, thank you. I can't express how grateful I am for the work that you do. And you know, it's lovely to see your energy and enthusiasm and helping kids. I have two questions. One you've kind of touched on rather. That'll be the second question. The first question is, you began by mentioning Cherriot.
Yes.
I live across the street from Cherriot.
Okay.
I went to Cherriot when it was Westla, wasn't even Cherriot.
Oh.
And you know, Cherriot is a Title I school, a Spanish-speaking school.
Dual immersion, yeah.
Dual immersion, and when I went to Cherriot, my English was very limited, and most of my family didn't speak any English, including my father, and I can imagine that as amazing as the program that you provide is, that there would be a barrier for someone like I was. And so my question is, and there's a lot of Cherriots in our school
Chavez.
district. And a lot of kids like I was. So what, if any, kind of specific targeted effort are you doing to help include Spanish-speaking kids who are Spanish dominant like I was? And a kind of corollary question, which is, I know you're targeting youth, but so often in our communities, education spaces and schools is when, if ever, families engage in public life for their kids. I remember when I was growing up, families that, they're working lots of jobs, and my dad was working a union job. We just, there was no time
Right.
or money or anything to do anything, but everyone always showed up to the school to learn about their kids' education. And so I'm just wondering if there is an opportunity, I know funds are limited and capacity is limited, but to also engage maybe some parents who are also maybe Spanish monolingual parents, to get them involved in this sort of project, both for the kind of bolstering youth engagement with transit, but also these parents and young families to get them riding buses and riding bikes and learning the ropes. That's question one, so I'll stop there.
Okay, that was a lot.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your support. And I value what you're saying because, one of our E's, our 6 E's, is to be equitable. We're very mindful of those students and making sure that they are absolutely included in what we're doing. It is a barrier. I don't speak Spanish. But at those schools, we did have a high number of students who only spoke Spanish. And Tanya was amazing. Tanya is a native Spanish speaking. She has a degree in it. And she has worked really hard alongside me to make sure that we are inclusive of them, that we are considering them. And I'm embarrassed I don't speak Spanish, but I would then go speak to the student, and then the children would interpret for me to that student that couldn't speak English. This is real, right? Children help one another out with that. And then when Tanya was there, she could easily engage, and she helped out immensely. So it's really one of those things that is top for us. And really, how does that mean we're going to engage in the future so that we can be equitable to the population? I really value those families that are taking the bus, right? Maybe they don't have a car, and how are they getting to the bus? And those are the families that are bringing the children to and from school. They're coming with us on our walking buses and that kind of thing. So we are engaging with them, and we're really working at being mindful of that and producing, literature that is in both English and Spanish, doing it on our website, on our social media, everything that we can do to blanket it in order to be accessible to everyone. It's a very good question. And in school, I think that during PE, I would need to ask, when that instruction is given in Spanish, because during my time there, I'm sure that at other schools it is given in Spanish. I'm hopeful. Just I was only at 3 schools. So during that time for bicycle safety education, we definitely had a lot of students that didn't speak English as a first language. And, you know, they didn't get it in Spanish. So that's a missed opportunity, right? So it should be addressed so that, yes, when those students are riding a bike, they do understand. Then when they're here, they understand we're doing arm signals, right? And what are the rules so that we can keep them safe when and if they're riding their bike here or how they take the bus. So that is something that I appreciate your sort of acknowledging and helping us to how we go forward with doing that. And I'll take note of that.
Thank you. And I met Tanya. She's wonderful the other day.
Oh, what's that?
I met Tanya the other day, and I know she's
Yeah,
wonderful. So thank
she
you.
is.
Yeah.
She's really fun. She has a lot of passion, like I do, and I think it makes us a great team. She has a passion that is unmatched, and she likes to help the community. We both are very community driven in a way that what is our part and how can we take place and really have an impact. And she makes it much easier for me to have someone to work alongside of me. And so I'm really grateful.
Can I just add, with the grant we just received, we were able to essentially double Tanya's hours, so she's more available for those kind of services and those translations. And I was going to say, thinking to how your answer was, when like the walking school buses go out to the families as the schools send them out, they're always bilingual, I believe. Yeah. So the families here can read about the walking school bus and join the kids on the walking school bus. So that's one way to reach out to the families in particular.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
When they're like announced, you know, she makes the flyer actually. So she makes the flyer, she does the translation, and does all that. So then the school would put the flyer out and advertise whatever our event would be in English and in Spanish, and then we could put it on our socials that way that they would know. But that's really for them because we don't really advertise our events because there are children walking and rolling to school, and we need to keep them safe.
Sure.
Your next question?
Yeah, thank you. If you'd allow me another question. It's the same question, but through disability. Another brief personal side. When I was in high school, same house, right across from Harriet, at this point in my life, we'd become a single-parent household, and a couple kids, and I got the bus for I'm a wheelchair user. I had the bus take me to school every day.
For Salem Kaiser Public Schools?
That's right.
Okay.
And it took about an hour and a half.
To get to your high school?
And I live in Harriet, because there were people everywhere, way out in Polk County, trying to get to West, and it would take at least an hour. It never took less than an hour. And I was in music. I was, some might say, an overachieving child. I always had things to do after school. So I would never take the bus back, and I would wheel home.
Oh, downhill.
About 2 miles every day. Did that for 4 years. And I know it doesn't show anymore. I've lost it, but I was fit. Anyways.
Well done.
And I would on occasion go uphill. But anyways, different from the Spanish-speaking community because there aren't a lot of disabled youth, you know, who are in that position. But I'm wondering if there is any thought among your program around being able to provide targeted services. I know you alluded to it kind of briefly, maybe 1 or 2 instances of doing this, but I'd like to hear if there's any thought about doing this in a more systematic way where you're helping mobility-limited youth, otherwise disabled youth, get access to transit, because I didn't start using mass transit until the bus stop was put in front of my house as an adult.
Okay.
And I would have used it if I had known how to, and anyway, so I'm saying this, I think there's potentially a lot of need there. And so any thought on that, any conversations internally about how to more, not that you're not effectively targeting that community, but to more intentionally target that community and support them in their transit needs as youth?
Absolutely, I would advocate for them. I feel like they should have equal opportunity just as any student. I feel like right now, at our level of capacity with this size of school district, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
And I would just address it just like I would the other one. Because you're pulled in so many areas, and I absolutely must prioritize the area that I am asked to do right now, which is pedestrian and bicycle safety, when we're talking about the number of students that are being hit by cars in a school year, right? That's happening. I'm actively trying to help students get this education so that we can help them to be safe to do that. That's number one. I don't know that during PE, I'm getting a lot of exposure, again, to students with disabilities yet, because a lot of this is happening in general PE. Now, they do have classes that come into PE, right, that they're teaching and they're trying to give them that education during PE. But I would say that it would need to be addressed. I would need to specifically target that and ask the school district and how we could go about a plan for that in the future. I wish that there was a coordinator specifically for that. I wish there was a coordinator specifically for pedestrian safety and a coordinator for bicycle safety and a coordinator for public transit. Honestly, I do. We have how many? 40,000 students that go to school here? This next year, I'm very excited that the school district is focused on joy and how they're going to bring joy into the schools, and that they have asked me to take part to bring that joy to our students. Let me tell you, bicycles and taking the bus and the fun things these kids, that was absolutely pure joy. But that's why I'm driven to do what I'm doing, because of those students. But there would need to be more of me. There's not enough. And I'm doing my best, right, to go everywhere that I possibly can and do what I can. But I fear, you just pointed it out, there's going to be an area I'm not going to be able to do. There has to be more people who want to be a part of this program and help me out, and they want to educate, or just the exposure. And so, just like I want adaptable bikes for students who can't ride a regular bike, I would like that too. I think there needs to be a level of focus on those things. But the school district also doesn't have staff this year to run at their capacity. So, you're repetitively coming up to this same topic over and over. We don't have the capacity. We don't have the capacity. We don't have the capacity. And it frustrates me only because, and I've said it before, students have always, and they always will be, my primary focus, because a child doesn't get to choose. They just don't. Where? Did they choose to get a ride in the car? Did they have to go on a bus? Did they have to walk? How were their means to get to school? But I think the level of exposure and just consideration for these children who are the next generation is right there. Just show them that they matter, and they do, right? You did by helping me get buses for kids. You did, and I appreciate that. And you looked out for me, and I think that people having that conversation and just acknowledging it is number one. And then say, okay, we want to work together as a community to help these children. How do we do it? And I'm there.
General Manager Pollock, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think to answer your question, so this is the importance of partnerships. So I would say, as you become aware through your programs, if there's a student with a disability who needs some assistance with public transit, that's where you work with us, and we have travel training services that can focus on that. So,
Okay.
So that's where that arm for you.
I really appreciate that. I've already gotten a phone call from a parent this year for their students who they're like, in your middle school you go 1.5 miles, and if you are 1.5 miles from the school, you have to be beyond 1.5 miles before you're going to get the school bus. And this parent needs help. I'm kind of limited, right? I explained that the program is about walking and rolling to school, but I said I'd be happy to help you find a bus route for your students because where they have to cross, it is dangerous, and the parent has a valid reason to be upset, and I understand that. And I looked up a bus route, and I found it, and I was like, well, it's every 30 minutes. It's Route 8. Do you think you can do it? That is an opportunity. I don't know if those children would normally take the bus, but it is an opportunity to talk about how would we train the students. So, I appreciate that because it's a welcomed opportunity for me. And I look forward to doing more of that this year to really highlight how our program could work together like that. So I love that idea. Thank you.
Other?
No,
Okay.
thank you for all that you do again, and any way we can support you, I'd be interested in.
Great. President Hinojosa Pressy?
Thank you, Vice President Davidson. I just want to bring it back to some joy, as Beth was mentioning. I just really want to highlight that you had 11 elementary schools participating, right? There's 42 elementary schools in the Salem-Keizer School District. You got over a quarter of the elementary schools in the Salem-Keizer School District, the second largest school district in the state of Oregon, to participate. And that is amazing. And the work that is being undertaken is absolutely changing lives. I love hearing the stories of just how kids are learning how to ride bicycles. And I definitely will take my time to make that pitch to push for the need for funding because of the change that we're making in students' lives and subsequently their families' lives. And also, I love that Director Laura Midkiff highlighted the need for that equity in terms of language accessibility and physical accessibility. And that's also another piece that ODOT needs to be considering whenever they're creating those grants, because I mean, when we're asking for that, we need those language differentials too for the people that we're hiring to make sure that this work is being undertaken. But thank you again so much for all the work that you're doing. And I'm just so excited to see what's to come in the next year. And hopefully we can all support getting our kids on bicycles and scooters and buses and whatever way they need to get to school.
Thank you for your support. I really appreciate it.
Director Carney?
Thank you, Vice President Davidson. And I thought we had already cloned you. How were you able to get so much done? I guess I had that mixed up. No, really, Beth,
Nobody
thank you.
really needs to clone me. I have children. They live with me. You all see me. One of me is perfectly fine, I promise.
I identify with that. But thank you for your amazing leadership and community organizing and advocacy for this program and our kids. It really is so important. And I'm wondering, I don't think I fully understand maybe the big picture of funding, and Mike, this maybe is a question for you. I probably should understand this better than I do. But the money comes through ODOT, and it is our Oregon funding. Is it a larger program than Oregon? Is Safe Routes across state lines, or is it got federal recognition?
Okay, so our current budget is funded through mostly the MPO, through a very flexible pot of funds called the Surface Transportation Block Grant. So most of the funds are a Surface Transportation Block Grant. It can be used in all sorts of things. Fortunately, the MPO is providing a portion of that for the Safe Routes to School program. At the state level, the legislature passed in HB 2017 specific money for Safe Routes to School statewide in two buckets. One for infrastructure, so new sidewalks, safe crossings, and they have a competitive grant process that's way oversubscribed to get all those improvements statewide. And then the second half of that bucket statewide is the educational component, hiring coordinators, doing special projects with coordinators. So that money comes from ODOT, but it's still a very small amount. So our, as I said, we have about $570,000 for our 3 years, our current 3 years, and the $150,000 from the state, which was that competitive grant for educational grants, will help a bit. But those grants are limited. Like I said, they only have 1.5 million statewide from ODOT, and I believe that's a combination of federal and state funds. I'm not exactly sure the true source of all those funds. So I would love for the state to find more funds. Like I said, they provided some initial funds, but they have some rules about if you've been funded 2 times, they're going to be less likely to fund you a third time. You have to kind of, just because they're trying to spread the money to more locations, so they don't want to keep rewarding the same areas if a new area needs some funds. And they have a whole advisory group. It's a Safe Routes to School advisory group that provides input about that whole process. But it comes down to basically the amount of funds available is just very tight. And we were lucky to get the $150,000 we got for this small grant. So I don't know if they realized it when they set up this program. I'm sure their heart was in the right place. More money for Safe Routes to School, and the decision to fund mostly infrastructure grants. I understand that part, but it leaved very little for the educational side. And now that many of us started these educational programs in like 2020 or 2022, how do we keep them going long term? Because they're certainly needed. Everything that Beth is doing and talking about and moving us toward, I can't imagine getting started with this and then a couple years from now saying, sorry, we just can't expand it, or we have to just eliminate it because there's just no more funds. So how do we keep a program that has this much value going long term? And that's my issue that I'm trying to work with. Fortunately, I hope my MPO, as Commissioner Espresi mentioned, she's very supportive. I think other members of our MPO are supportive, so I'm hoping the MPO will continue to help fund that, but having the state be a bigger part of funding these programs statewide would be desperately needed.
I could not agree more. Thank you for answering the question and providing us some clarity and insight on that. And thank you very much for the presentation, all your amazing work in our community.
I'm really excited for this next school year. I know I shared all this, but now that we have sort of revisited the partnership plan with the superintendent, they're directing the principals and the PE teachers. So they're signing up, they're emailing me, they're calling me, they're ready. And so they've been given the green light, right? Everybody kind of understands now, what am I doing? They don't look at me and think I'm selling them vacuum cleaners anymore, I guess. Because every time I go there, they were so confused with what Safe Routes to School was and what is they were doing. So it took some time to get it going, and it will continue to take time. But I feel really confident that this next year, I think Ruby Bridges is going to be amazing, and I hope that you walk to school with us that day. And you can walk too. You can roll. I mean, West Salem might be a little challenging, but you've clearly already done that. So you would be representing that for children. That's your opportunity to also show, how do you do that? And a child can see you, and that is impactful. So I invite you too to join us. You're a pedestrian, you walk and roll. Same thing, right? Children just don't have the opportunity. So we're giving them that opportunity. And this next year is going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to have you all along and join us.
Thank you, Coordinators Schmidt, Director Jaffe. I just want to echo what my colleagues have said, that this is an incredibly valuable program for our region. I'm keenly aware of the funding challenges, and so I imagine we will have conversations here as a board. I'll just put the plug in that I would like this to be seriously considered as one of our legislative priorities, that an expanding of Safe Routes to School funding at the statewide level, and I would expect that you would have the full backing of the board at the MPO to be able to advocate for additional MPO dollars there. And then this is also something that I will bring to our Council of Governments to see if it can't be a regional priority to increase Safe Routes to School funding statewide, because Salem-Keizer currently has this program, but I'm certain that Monmouth Independence Central would love this, and McMinnville would love this, but right now there's not adequate funding at the statewide level. So I think the Council of Governments could and should advocate for this as well. So looking forward to those conversations where we can hopefully expand the tent on who supports this. So.
Thank you for that. Also, another big thing is Woodburn.
Sure.
These areas like Central School District out in Monmouth Independence, Woodburn, Jervis, they have something. Everybody around that is within our reach should have the opportunity. But it's unfortunate that the money just isn't there.
Right.
Woodburn especially needs it. They had a student that was hit and killed. When that happens, let's try to not be so reactive. Let's be as proactive as we possibly can be. And we're in this opportunity because this is our community and this is our time. And these are your children and my children, and everyone else's. So I welcome all parents and grandparents and family members to join me. And a simple way to walk to school, and we can talk about it.
Sounds good. right?
Briefly.
Please.
Thank you, Vice President Davidson. Very briefly, a full-throated support of your recommendation, which is to adopt this as a legislative priority. It's going to be a big transit year. I know that means a lot for a lot of people, but I'd love to see this be a part of that conversation. And to add on to that, I guess this is a question or a request of you, Director Jaffe. I mean, I would love to see us dream big and to think about what dollars would translate into what services and what you would do with however much money you would want. Does that make sense? And so having a partnership and trying to really develop and concretize what $1 million would do, or something of that nature, would be a benefit to us as we kind of navigate these priorities. And Beth's giving me more money, she says.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying. I think that would be helpful for me at least, and I'm sure I speak for the board. So thank you.
Yeah, it would be wonderful if the other Safe Routes to School entities within Oregon could also identify what their ideal circumstances are. So we can speak with one unified voice at the legislature. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. Thank you for all your work. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Next up, we have the get there, not here, get there challenge. Well, come here. Get there, come here. General Manager Pollock.
All right. We'll get there by asking Kiki Doman to please come forward and present the report.
Very well done.
All right. Excellent. All right. President Enos Pressey and Vice President Davison, thank you so much for having me and the members of the board here tonight. I'm excited to be here to officially announce Oregon's 12th annual statewide challenge to help make Oregon a better place to live, work, play by encouraging Oregonians to reduce their drive-alone trips for 1 week. So let's dive into it and see what this challenge is all about. All right, so tonight we'll just be going over the why. Like, why are we continuing to do a statewide challenge, and what's this year's purpose? Then we'll briefly go over just the logistics on how this challenge is gonna work. And then we'll go over the fun stuff like prizes and the sponsors that help us gain those prizes. And then just some really great tools that community members and also TO practitioners and then also employers can use to help promote the Get There Challenge. And then next steps, and then we'll open up for some questions, if any. Perfect. Oh. Perfect. All right, so this year's theme, if you haven't seen, is the Get There Car Free Challenge. So this is inspired by the actual World Car Free Day, which is September 22nd. So a little bit of context, ODOT, or the state of Oregon, kind of realized that there wasn't an actual national level effort that recognized World Car Free Day, especially, and there definitely wasn't a statewide one in Oregon. And so the state, along with some TO or transportation option programs and practitioners and partners all got together to create this campaign for this year. And so it's a little different from years past because those challenges prior were typically in October. So we rearranged it a little for a 1 week challenge that would end on World Car Free Day on September 22nd. So there's a little bit of a challenge. All right. So how it's going to work. So folks can actually join the challenge by two ways, by taking a pledge and also trip logging. So I'll go over a little bit more in depth about those ways in the next slide. But and then the dates, it'll kick off on the 16th, and like I mentioned, it will end on September 22nd, which is the World Car Free Day. And then anyone that is 18 years old and older that live or work in Oregon are eligible to participate as well. All right. So this slide, initially when this was sent in for the agenda a couple weeks ago, the data wasn't really fun. So I did actually switch out the infographic today with the most updated information that we do have. So just as a side note there, it might be a little different than what is in your packets possibly. But so, like I mentioned, folks have 2 different ways to participate, or 2 kind of action items. They can actually take a pledge to drive less during the week of the challenge, and this taking a pledge will also kind of give you extra entries and more chances to also for the raffle drawings at the end of the challenge. So you could possibly up your chances for winning some great prizes. But what the pledge kind of consists of is a series of questions that like add your name and emails, and then you can select the modes that you will either try for the first time or take throughout that week, and then kind of estimate a round trip drive alone miles that you will actually save by driving less that week. So we, as of now, have Oregonians, or folks that live and work in Oregon, we have 220 total pledges as of today. So those folks have kind of estimated their drive alone trip miles and that what they'll save during that 1 week, and it's just under 9,000. So 8,090 pounds of CO2 are from being emitted by the driving less. So sorry, that was more of the CO2. But then they also pledged by that they'll take these modes. So we have some cyclists that are eager to join the challenge. We have no van poolers. We'll have to work on that one. But then we have some transit users, and we have carpools and teleworking. Teleworking is also a very viable trip as well, or a loggable trip. So. And then actually logging trips. So once it kicks off, folks are able to log into their active Get There accounts, and they can actually go in and log on their dashboard. They'll just pick the mode that they used and where they went, and then how they got back, and if it's the same. And if you log more than 2 within that week, you actually get additional entries. So a little bit more incentive to keep going and have that positive behavior change and try something new. And our sponsors. So this is kind of just a good plug and a big shout out to our sponsors, because it's because of them that we're able to provide some kind of fun rewards and prizes. And this is our overall prize structure that folks are able to hopefully achieve and win. So all eligible participants will be entered into a raffle to win these prizes, again through more entries by pledging and more entries by logging. But what's really cool is that there's several kind of different gift cards, but the one I kind of wanted to call out was the third one down. And this is kind of a newer one that is a give and get local gift card. So folks Oregon businesses that are enrolled in these like give or get local gift cards, these folks that win this prize can actually re-gift them to loved ones or whoever they want, or they can use them for personal. But it's just kind of just a fun way to also just share the love, and maybe it's like with their carpool partner, or they can share different amounts with them. So kind of innovative and kind of fun that just different prizes this year. And promotional toolkits. So we've made it really easy for participants and community members to promote the challenge. So we created access ready to use content using drop-downs on the website, so folks can easily download and distribute as needed. So we have emails that are tailored with pre-written content, and of course folks can customize that as needed. We have flyers that are easily downloaded both digitally, and you can obviously print it out too. Social media content. We have web copy, which is basically that grab and go content that you can put on your own web page if you desire to do that. We have photos and graphics that can be used for social media or just for emails or anything like that as well. And then just press releases and announcements for other media outlets as well. And then we also created these kind of custom, a little bit more tailoring just for specific employers as well. So we're sending out these toolkits to our ETCs and our employer contacts throughout the region. And so they can also send out these tailored employee emails. We have break room TV slides if folks have, monitor in their break rooms. We have content for their intranet as well and things that they can promote on their website. We also provided some other materials and kind of incentives, kind of like resource tools for brown bag lunches as well, so we can do on-site or work-site events for folks that want to celebrate World Car Free Day. And so, yeah, lot of fun stuff. And then next step, so earlier this month we had, we kind of launched the statewide promotion, just to be like, hey, it's coming in like a week, or next month. And then local promotion, so emails started going out actually earlier this week. So sent out I want to say at least just under 60 emails already this week to partners and employers, just letting folks know that this is coming, having access to those resources as well. And then challenge begins, as it's been mentioned quite a bit, is on the 16th. Last day to actually log trips will be 3 days after the last day. So just to kind of make sure that folks have enough time, like, oh, I went to an event on the 22nd by transit and I forgot to write. So we have that little buffer of time that you can retroactively log trips. And then winners will be announced on the 26th, the following day. And then there will, of course, be a survey that will be sent out to all participants. And we're really excited. It's a fun challenge. Thank you.
It is a fun challenge. Thank you, Coordinator Doman. Any questions or comments? Director Carney, please.
Thank you, Vice President Davidson. Thank you for the presentation. Super excited to log my trips, although I did see that toggle box about does this replace a single, like a driving trip. This trip is replacing a drive alone trip, and I never have the opportunity to drive anywhere alone, so. And I've just been riding my bike for so long, I'm not sure how I'll do that. But I was wondering, I think you said this is the 12th year that we're doing the Get There Challenge. And how has participation sort of trended in those last 12 years? I'm assuming like everything, it just took like a giant gut punch during the pandemic, but it's coming back? The pandemic really actually provided a different type of opportunity to alter the challenge a little bit. During that year, in 2020 and 21, we actually had a little bit more achievement space where folks were able to actually have a little bit more educational kind of check marks that was what was achieved. And of course, we promoted getting out, but folks weren't really traveling, to the office, and so it was really promoting all trips and to really explore, maybe just taking a walk. And there was a lot of mental health into it too. That's always a priority, but especially then, that was a major theme at that time. And it was to also just educate on safety education and pedestrian, and also like, oh, watch this video because we know that you downloaded, or so we were able to kind of get those points for the raffles, because we still were really supported by our sponsors at that time. And so we were able to still have these raffle drawings to incentivize, okay, well, we might not be able to actually reduce, we're reducing miles because a lot of folks weren't going a lot of places, but at the same time, let's educate. So we kind of saw different opportunities. And I think since then, it's really kind of, every year has kind of been different. Last year, we tried the team-based, challenge, and that went great. But we also got a lot of feedback that there was some, so we learned from that, and we're like, okay, well, let's try something new and make it a little bit more simpler. Let's shift it to September only for a week, because typically it's been a 2-week challenge. And so we're kind of just playing with it, because it did start, I think 12, this is the 12th one. So trends and everything has changed. Preferences have changed, technology's changed. So yeah, I think it's changed everywhere, which has been cool. But participation is still, I feel like it's been pretty good. Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to say, so I've participated in the past, really enjoyed it, and I've logged back in, I've taken the pledge, but I noticed on my dashboard here, another reason why to do this, and I think you mentioned this, but evidently for all of the trips I have logged over these years, I've saved $839 in the process.
Go
So
you.
I don't know where I spent it, but I'm
Yeah,
glad
it's
that
like,
I
you should go
pocketed
treat
it.
yourself.
So,
Reallocated.
yeah.
Excellent. Yes, it is great. The dashboard does kind of show you just savings and all the things.
Yeah. All right. If there's no other questions or comments, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Now we have an opportunity here, public comment. I know we have received one piece of written public comment that the board has reviewed and and General Manager Pollock had a chance to respond to it already, which was great. I don't see any members of the public present here today that would like to provide comment, and we don't have any virtual as well. So we'll go ahead and move to the consent calendar. As a reminder, it's just items A1 and A2. And so if someone would like to make a motion.
I move that we, oh,
Please, someone just go.
I moved we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposition, motion passes unanimously. All right. Next up, items deferred from the consent calendar. So here we'll turn our attention to reportable assault data. General Manager.
I'll ask Karen Garcia, please, to come forward to answer what questions you may have.
Good evening, Vice President Davidson and members of the board. This evening, we're here to talk about the National Transit Database assault data that was reported for fiscal year 24, the fourth quarter of the year. So just as a reminder, back in April of 2023, we had new reporting requirements from the National Transit Database to report physical and non-physical assaults against transit operators and other transit workers. And so each quarter, I've been providing the numbers to the board for their review on those reportable events. And this memo, because it's the fourth quarter of the fiscal year, shows a complete fiscal year's worth of data. So I'm here to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Manager Garcia. Any questions?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Director Alar Metcalf.
Thank you, Vice President Davidson, and thank you, Manager Garcia, for being here. I appreciate these data and, you know, all the narrativized data as well, but I have a couple questions about them and a couple requests. The first is, we've had a couple of conversations about public safety, most notably at the work session a few months ago, and this is an important reminder of just kind of the gravity of this issue and this challenge that we're facing as an agency, but also as a community. And so, I appreciate this report. I think I have a couple questions. The first is, you have on page 39, you have listed under non-physical assaults two events that happened on May 8th. The second event was involved a rider who lifted his shirt to display a firearm in their waistband. And I have a question around whether that, I'm trying to understand and categorize events as they happen so that we can be more reactive and maybe even get to a place where we're proactive. And I'm wondering if that isn't maybe placed somewhere different. I feel like brandishing a weapon is different from being insulted. Does that make sense? And I'm wondering if there maybe are ways that we can have a more specific conversation around incidences that will allow us to make better decisions. So that's kind of a common question, if that makes sense. So are there ways to help kind of scaffold the conversation where, you know, being threatened with a firearm is not put in with drunken comments?
Let me try to answer your question, Director. with the NTD, when they put the information out, they were very clear about how they defined a physical assault. And the way that they defined that was any kind of contact. So if I punch you, throw soda on you, spit on you, throw a bag of popcorn in your face, anything that makes physical contact with a transit worker or transit operator, that was considered a physical assault. It was much more difficult for them to define non-physical assaults, and basically what is in the directive is that we report anything that is threatening or intimidating. So we have to leave it up to the receiver of the information or the threat to determine if they feel threatened, and how the employees report it. That kind of drives how I report to the NTD. We all have different life experiences. We all interpret information differently. And so what I may perceive as a threat, my coworker may not. And so I have to leave it up to how that individual receives the information. And so it makes it more difficult to report the non-physical assaults because it's not crystal clear like the physical assault definition is. So I tend to err on the side of report. I don't want to make decisions about whether or not staff feel threatened or feel intimidated. So if it's put in a report that the staff felt unsafe, they felt threatened, they were verbally threatened, they felt intimidated by another person's actions, then I'm reporting it because I feel like that's the right thing to do to properly represent the workforce.
I appreciate that, and I agree with you. And my question, I think, the intent of my question was less to do about minimizing insults, because insults are very real, but elevating the severity of things that I would consider to graduate into different classes of infractions and safety concerns that I think, obviously the primacy as decision makers is to protect the public, but it's also to protect our staff. And to me, it's unacceptable to have this with the firearm happen. And I would like to be able to engage with these data in a way where I don't have an answer to this. I'm not asking for an answer, but just so that we can talk about a firearm differently from an insult. Not to make the insult less, but to elevate the incident of the firearm. You want to say something, Alan?
Well, I'll let Karen go then. I'll have something to say.
Oh, I was just going to say that, we have to, for me, in my role, I look at these types of events from a number of different perspectives. This report is from the NTD's perspective. We also have our ordinance violations and behavioral expectations. I have to look at it through that perspective. And then I also have to look at it through the lens of the law, and different activities are different criminal behavior and qualify as different crimes under the law. And so because of that, I agree with you. These reports involve a number of different events that could be weighed differently in severity, but because of the way that the NTD defines it, they're kind of captured together. But we do, as a unit, look at the different types of activities that are happening and respond to these things differently because of the level of severity, or because of the difference between whether or not it's just a perception of a threat or an ordinance violation or a crime that's been committed. So I think internally we do respond to those things, and I appreciate the question because I don't think that we should create, not all non-physical assaults are created equally.
And I would really gonna say the same thing, maybe a little differently. It's the local response. This does not mean how the local response was made. This is to fit aggregate data into a national compilation. So they have to do this. They're not looking at all the nuances. We look at the nuances, but for the purposes of reporting NTD, they're telling us this is how it is.
Yeah, and I believe that, and I appreciate you clarifying that. So I guess there's an open question then about ways that we can receive information as a board that would facilitate understanding in a way that's separate from the NTD. But
correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll maybe make a request and you let me know if this is what you're hoping to get. But for these quarterly reports, I wonder if we could get the same categorization, but have additional categories for both non-physical assault and physical assault when a weapon is present. So recognizing that NTD doesn't care about that data, but we, the board, might care about that data. Is that more or less, would that solve what you're hoping?
It would definitely address it, and I know, Karen, that you've had something like that in the past, but I think I'd like that information consistently. And I think I would add another request, which is I don't know how workable this is for you and your team, but I appreciate the value of quarterly reports. The problem with quarterly reports on this issue in particular is, I don't want to make this claim, but I feel like of the board, I may ride the bus the most, because I have to ride the bus, and so I'm here a lot to do anything, and even then I feel removed from this issue. And so I would appreciate maybe monthly reports on this. You don't have to come and talk to us monthly, but written reports where we can keep a closer and more real-time pulse on these issues, because I can look back and say, okay, quarter 1, 3, 12, but I think I would appreciate monthly reports, and that would help me, as a policymaker, sometimes making decisions to guide our reasoning in our conversations, which we do have, but the most current data, the most regularly as possible, I think, is something I would request moving forward. I don't know if the board agrees with that or not, but
I would be supported, recognizing that there's staff constraints and resource issues. So without knowing any of that information, I would echo that I would find that information useful. The more regularity of it, I think it would also more deliberately make it more top of mind to both the board and also members of the public who pay attention to this, which I think would be a value add. But yeah.
Karen, when you submit your data to the NTD, are you just reporting the numbers, or do you also give a narrative?
Only the numbers.
Yeah.
It's actually a form that you fill in online.
So the NTD doesn't even see any of it. They're
Right,
just looking
yeah.
at, and they're compiling agencies all across to get
Massive data,
accurate
yeah.
data. So it doesn't really answer your question. I just wanted you to know this is kind of not what they're asking. They just want that little chart.
right. And I appreciate that too, and I guess it just comes down to the NTD, what they're requesting is maybe not what we want to be seeing, and so trying to help balance that.
We'll take a look at a little different packaging.
And then I have a couple questions that may be best directed to General Manager Pollock. I feel the urgency to have another board conversation about public safety, and I know that the CSO is kind of coming, and so I'd like to understand maybe a timeline for the CSO and understanding what that looks like in the near future, and then also putting out into the air a request around a follow-up conversation about public safety, like the one we had at the work session, where the work session I thought was productive, and we kind of approached synthesizing ideas and ways forward, but we didn't quite get there. I'd like to see the conversation continue, especially in light of these data and others like it. And so those are two questions for you.
So I can answer the first question, kind of. So we're currently recruiting for the chief safety officer. Hopefully by late fall, somebody will be on board. Depends on number of applicants, where they live, and all that. And we can schedule in a work session. We'll work with the executive committee to get that scheduled.
Thank you, and I appreciate you, Vice President Davidson, for allowing me the digression. I just think I wanted to pull it and talk about it, and I mostly to staff. I just really want to emphasize how important this issue is and how seriously we take it, and I think it's important to talk about it when it comes up, and I hope we talk about it more. So, thank you.
Thank you, Director Laura Midkiff. I just want to comment that, the data is the data. I have to do the reporting, but I do appreciate the fact that the board wants to look at it from a more holistic, not just numbers in a box that meet a certain definition, so that we can determine together how to strategize how we're going to respond to it and provide the safest transit service possible to help not only our riders, but our employees and operators stay safe as well. Are there any other questions?
Other questions? Okay. Manager Garcia, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we will need an action to receive.
Oh, we'll need an action to receive it? Oh, yes. Yes, we did pull this from the consent calendar, so we do need an action to accept this report?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the National Transit Database reportable assault data for fiscal year 2024, quarter 4.
I'll second it.
We have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 That was everyone, so motion passes unanimously. Wonderful. So now we'll move to our action items, the first of which deals with the contract for landscaping services.
Who's coming up, Tom or Zach? Both of you? Okay. So Tom Dietz and Zach Leith will present the report.
Good evening, Vice President Davidson and fellow board members. I'm here tonight to...
Zach, could you snag the microphone? Oh, thank you.
Where was I? I come before you tonight to ask the board to authorize general manager to enter into a contract with Brightview Landscaping LLC for the amount not to exceed $115,000 over a 5-year period. Cherriots has always purchased their landscaping services for all district properties. The contract is expiring. The district went out for an ITB, and we received 4 bids that were deemed to be responsive per the FTA guidelines. The successful purchaser was selected based on lowest bid. The expenses associated with this contract are accounted for in the approved 24-25 budget. So Brightview LLC will be responsible for basic landscaping needs at the district's properties, cutting the grass, blowing, picking up leaves, weeding, stuff like that. So with that, staff recommends the board to authorize general manager to enter into a contract with Brightview LLC in the amount not to exceed $115,000 over a 5-year period. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have.
Thank you, Manager Lee. Any questions? All right, I got one. Does this contract allow for us to add, for example, another property, perhaps a South Salem Transit Center within a 5-year period?
Yeah, in the board packet there, it does say contingency on there, and I believe that's what that is for, is when we get South Salem, it's gonna need some mowing and some upkeep when we first get it ready.
Great, thank you. Chief Operating Officer Dietz.
Yeah, one thing to consider is this scope of work was written months ago when we were not as close to land acquisition as we are today. So I would venture to say that we would do an amendment to broaden the scope of work, because a whole other property it's quite significant for a company that already does 2 of our transit centers now.
And our current contract does allow for amendments like that, or will allow?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. President Hinojosa-Pressy.
Thank you, Vice President Davidson. I don't know if this is like the right time to ask this question, but in our landscaping services, do they use pesticides?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I believe they do. They use them for weed killers and stuff like that.
Okay. I'm wondering if maybe like either if this contract could be amended, or if in the future we can discuss about the option of not using pesticides, especially with, I know that like all the effort that has gone into making a lot of our properties being better for the environment, and for all the consideration that we're taking about like what our buses kick up and that not getting drained into like the waterways. We want to make sure that we can take that same care with our pesticides.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you for that, President Hinojosa-Pressy. I think what we can do as we kick this off with the new provider is talk about natural herbicides, pesticides, and organics. We could certainly make that a part of our discussion.
Thank you.
As a quick follow-up to that, I assume that the successful bidder will have integrated pest management certifications that would allow them to do that. Okay, in which case they're following all those rules. Wonderful. Thank you. Other questions? Okay. Wonderful. Then, would someone like to make a motion?
I move that the board authorize the general manager to enter into a contract with Brightview Landscaping LLC for an amount not to exceed $115,000 over a 5-year period.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? I'll just chime in to say that I would also, for future contracts, I recognize now is not the time, but for future contracts, I would love to see non-liquid fuel-based equipment used. Two-stroke engines in particular are very polluting. Running it for about an hour is about the equivalent of driving a single car across the country. So it's very polluting, surprisingly so.
Say that again.
So running a two-stroke engine like a blower for about an hour is, and I might be getting the magnitudes wrong. It might be halfway across the country, but it's a distance that is mind-boggling. So, anyways, that's just something I'm aware of. So, but the motion at hand is this, and so if there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, this next item, you know what, can I take it?
You can, or IL's prepared to do a report.
Hi, Al, please come on up.
Good evening. In accordance with Board Policy 116, the Board of Directors is responsible for evaluating the performance of the General Manager. In addition to the evaluation, the Board shall give consideration to any change in the General Manager's compensation package. In June 2024, the General Manager completed a self-evaluation, which was shared with the Board. The Board completed individual performance evaluations, and the Chief Human Resources Officer prepared a composite performance evaluation. The Board held an executive session on August 15, 2024 to review the composite results.
Great. Thank you, Chief Human Resources Officer Rose. I'll maybe just kick it off. We can maybe lead with discussion on I'll maybe just summarize a few things. So as CHRO Rose just articulated, this has been a process that we as the board have been working on for several months now. This is one of our annual duties. It's something that we take rather seriously, which is the performance review of the single employee that we have jurisdiction over, that we have the responsibility over. And it's something that I know I personally take very seriously, and I think I speak for the board that it's something that we collectively take rather seriously, which is why this process takes months. So as CHRO Rose mentioned, this involves both a self-evaluation that the general manager conducts as well as individual evaluations conducted of the general manager, which we then discuss in executive session as a board. And it's a time-consuming process because it's a worthwhile process. I think the meeting earlier, or the portions of the meeting earlier today where we literally were handed gold medals based on the recognition of the work that Cherriots does is one physical manifestation of the work that General Manager Pollock does, but also the work that his team that he has built does. And I have said this in years past, but I believe that General Manager Pollock's one of his best strengths is that he recognizes the weaknesses that he has and he compensates with them with the people he surrounds himself with. I have very high levels of confidence in both our executive leadership team, senior leadership team, and on down through the organization, which I think, again, reflects very highly of General Manager Pollock. Now, that being said, we also discussed all aspects of General Manager Pollock's performance. We identified a few growing edges, however, we as a board collectively are confident that he is up to the challenge to lead Cherriots moving forward. So that's me perhaps attempting to summarize some of the thoughts of the board, but I would welcome other comments from other board members.
Thank you, Vice President Davidson. And I just want to say thank you to Hael for leading. This was a really well-constructed, solid process. I've done this before, and I just felt very well supported with the information that you provided us with in terms of comparisons and helping us understand just all the different, kind of values and comparisons we were making. So thank you very much. That was a big benefit. And to, my fellow board members, for the time spent in discussion, to Alan for the time with the self-evaluation, I do find your kind of honest critique of yourself and self-reporting to be very helpful in the process. And I'm really happy with the outcome we reached. So thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Well, in our discussion, we also discussed the general manager's compensation package, and we reached a consensus in executive session. However, of course, in an executive session, you are not able, nor should you take public action. So I'd invite Director Laura Midkiff to propose a motion.
Thank you, Vice President Davidson. The board moves to approve a 2% increase in the district's deferred compensation contribution, a 4.25% merit increase, and a one-time vacation leave accrual of 40 hours.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All right.
I just want to
Please.
Reiterate my colleagues' thanks to Hael for her professionalism and support of this throughout this process. We asked a lot of numbers of her and a lot of reports of her, and she went above and beyond, and as she does in all things. So thank you for that, and would like to echo myself briefly. I'm coming up on a anniversary with Cherriots, and from the start, I think I've said, if not publicly, I've certainly said privately, how exceptional the enterprise here is at the agency, and how both from the decency of transit operators to the commitment and care of the executive team, and that, as Ian said, is in many ways a reflection of the excellence and decency of the agency's head. So thank you, Alan, for your leadership, and it's been a great joy to serve Cherriots for almost a year now, in large part thanks to you and the work of your team.
President Hinojosa Presi.
Thank you, Vice President Davidson. I would just like to say that I echo what everyone has shared. Thank you very much to Chief Human Resources Manager, or Chief Human Resources Officer, not Manager. I just gave you two different titles. And also to our board clerk for all the support that they provided during this process, and also to, of course, our General Manager Pollock for the excellent work that he does. And definitely want to echo what Vice President Davidson said about surrounding himself with an excellent team to support the work that needs to be achieved. And just want to reiterate what I said privately also, is that these 40 hours are contingent on you actually taking them. Please take a vacation. Thank you.
All right. So we do have a motion and a second on the table. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. General Manager Pollock.
Great, thank you. I do have a few comments I would like to make. First off, thank you very much for the recognition of my work. I am very proud to be the general manager for Cherriots. It's a great thrill for me each and every day to come to work, because I have a great group of people that I work with. As the head of an organization, sometimes you get credit for things other people do. So I want to acknowledge that publicly, that it is a total team effort. This is a reflection of my performance, but also the entire organization's performance. And I thank the entire members of Team Cherriots for that. In your evaluation, there was some recommendations on 5 focus areas that you'd like me to spend a little extra attention on this year, and I will have an action plan to you in the next couple of weeks on how I propose to do that. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, both Chief Human Resources Officer Rose, and thank you, General Manager Pollock. We'll proceed to our first and only informational report on our strategic plan report for quarter four.
All right, so I'll ask Bobby Kidd to come back up and report on quarter 4 of our strategic plan.
Right. Good evening, President Host Pressey, Vice President Ian Davidson, and members of the board. I'm here this evening to talk about quarter 4 for fiscal year 24 strategic plan. And in talking about quarter 4, I'm going to be wrapping up the entire fiscal year and kicking off fiscal year 25. So lots to talk about. Always, I begin with guiding principles. These are embedded in our everyday, our vision, our mission, and our values. And that exemplifies what it means to show up to Team Cherriots every day. So to wrap up fiscal year 24 success outcomes, we referenced them earlier in the TransDash presentation, but they're in 4 success outcome categories: community value, customer satisfaction, culture of ownership, and financial sustainability. So at the beginning of fiscal year 24, we set goals. The first one being increasing baseline community value score of 87 by 3 percentage points. We made it to 85, so that is 2 points down, but still an exceptional score. And then customer satisfaction, our goal was to maintain a baseline of a net promoter score of 52 for local or for fixed route, and then 51 for Lyft, our paratransit service. And for NPS, for our local service, we did 55, and we actually increased it for paratransit service, but that's not reflected on there. And then for culture of ownership, Cherriots wanted to increase the employee engagement score from 62 up 5 percentage points to 67. And it did increase to 64, but not the full goal. But over the course of 2 years, Cherriots did increase the score by 5 points. And then for financial sustainability, the main goal for year 2 was to develop a 3-year rolling budget forecast. Okay, so for fiscal year 25 success outcomes, these were derived from multiple areas, one being the goals and where we landed at the end of fiscal year 24. It took into account the surveys, the community, the customer, and the employee. And so we have, there we go. For community value, the goal is to maintain for this fiscal year a community value score of over 84. So that's 85 and higher. So the goal is not to dip below where we are currently, but to increase or maintain. For the customer satisfaction, the goal is to be no less than 52 and no less than 51 for the Net Promoter Score for local and our paratransit service. And then for culture of ownership is to increase our score of 64 by 5 points to get to the score of 69. And then for year 3 of our financial sustainability goal is to deliver a full capital program budget and successful completion of a triennial review. The goal of the successful completion of triennial review was an addition. So 3 years ago when we were originally planning, the original goal was just the full capital budget. That's a job in itself, but they added the completion of triennial review. Okay, so let's talk about the fiscal year 24 organizational tactics. I have a general update for each one of these listed on the screen. So for the climate action plan, we are in the procurement process. So we got 3 proposals are in the middle of the source evaluation committee. And fiscal year 25 will be spent working on developing the plan. So fiscal year 24 was kind of initiating the procurement process, and fiscal year 25 is actually going to be the nitty-gritty of developing the plan. For the integration of battery electric buses, there was a ribbon cutting ceremony, it was mentioned earlier, on August 14th. It was a beautiful event. I saw many of you there. And big shout out to everybody there attending and planning it. And the BEBs will be entering service very shortly in September. So a lot of work was done in fiscal year 24 to move that project along. For the access tactic under community value, through the use of T-Best software and an evaluation of the system has been completed, and this tactic is continuing into fiscal year 25 under the Planning and Development Division as part of the service enhancement work and will continue as part of the COA. For the community value survey and the customer satisfaction survey, they were both conducted last fall. Those results were shared out with the board, staff, the CAC, and an infographic with the results was actually developed and used at the federal legislation information packet during that process. And then we're already gearing up for the next round of surveys this fall in a couple months. For the e-fare implementation, it's been a successful and busy year implementing UMO. There's still work being done partnering with schools for student access, but a lot of accomplishment happening that happened this past fiscal year. For the Cherriots Intelligent Transportation System, this tactic has been carried into fiscal year 25 with striving to achieve substantial system completion in November. For clean and safe passenger amenities, 2 facility maintenance workers were added at the first of the fiscal year in order to address this need, since there are continued assessments and adjustments being made in order to ensure clean and safe amenities for our passengers. And then the merit-based performance management system, this is the second tactic that is being rolled over or carried over into fiscal year 25, because as we know, goals are consistently being adjusted, and this is one of them, one of the 2 tactics being carried into fiscal year 25. So I have 4 more tactics. Management and resource tracking instrument, MARTI. Training is a main focus as both the finance and HR portions are pushed out. For diversity, equity, inclusion, the newly established staff committee called DRIVE, standing for Diversity, Respect, Inclusion, Voice, and Equity, completed their cultural competency certificate through Chemeketa Community College, and the committee is currently finalizing their charter and identifying priorities. For the employee engagement survey, the employee engagement survey was conducted in April. Feedback groups were conducted a couple of weeks ago. Those results were compiled, and now there's action planning occurring in order to address the results. And finally, in fiscal year 24, the finance story, there was an infographic developed highlighting key financial metrics to aid in telling the financial story. So that's a lot of narrative around all of the amazing work that happened in fiscal year 24 around these tactics. The work is not done. Many of these tactics and activities are still moving forward. They might not be recognized an organizational tactic in fiscal year 25, but that doesn't mean that work is still not being completed on them. So you might be asking, well, what's the fiscal year 25 tactic list? And I have it there for you, not only on the screen, but also in the strategic plan printed for you. So again, the 4 success outcomes: community, customer, culture of ownership, and financial sustainability. I'm going to highlight a few of these. You might notice the established zero emission infrastructure roadmap. So we focus in on BEBs for fiscal year 24. That's going to continue on in the zero emission infrastructure roadmap, but it's going to be more comprehensive and involve other items as well. Share the Cherriots story, so not just the financial story, but the Cherriots story in general. And then customer satisfaction, you'll notice that the Cherriots Intelligent Transportation System is in fiscal year 25, the COA, and then it was mentioned earlier, but the improved safety and security, that was heard through the surveys and through the discussion and leadership and in-service and the focus groups. And so it is an organizational tactic for fiscal year 25. So that is something to note. For culture of ownership, we're looking at an emerging leaders program. and implement a mentor-mentee plan, successful negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement, a merit-based performance management system, complete implementation of a reward and recognition program, improve project performance and management, and improve technology services. And then finally, for financial sustainability, develop a long-range financial plan, establish employee-facing human resource and finance employee portal, enhance the capital investment plan, and successful completion of a triennial review. A lot of goals, a lot of work to be done. I am very confident that the team is up to it. And I appreciate every single person who had a part in strategic planning for these tactics. And these are the organizational tactics, but we also have divisional tactics happening within each division. Okay. So nearing the end, we have the Q4 overview of the tactics. So on the left-hand side is broken down by division, how many tactics are held within each division. By divisional tactics, and at the bottom is the 13 organizational tactics we have. And on the right-hand side, you'll notice the graphs, and the graphs identify the status of the tactics for Q4. So for division, we had 12 complete. In progress, we had 4, 2 we had behind schedule, and 1 not started. Those are the divisional tactics. For organizational, we had 6 complete, 5 in progress, 1 behind schedule, and 1 not started. If you see a not started or behind schedule, those are being carried into the next fiscal year. Okay, so looking ahead. What's next? Actually, let's look back really quickly. We rolled out the strategic plan at the last in-person GM roundtable. Got to speak to quite a few employees. And then we also printed the plans for all of you, and it's public on our website and our portal, so we rolled that out. And then we've spent the last couple of months kicking off the work for fiscal year 25, Q1. And then we're gearing up for the customer and community surveys in the fall, just a couple months away, getting plans going for that. And then you were here earlier and got to listen to Dr. James Rubin talk about the Trans-Dash dashboard, and we are continuing to update that and make sure that our metrics are accurately reported, and we are on the cutting edge of the new metrics coming out with the CO2 and the access. All right, are there any questions? Thank you for having me.
Any questions for Administrator Kidd? I'll lead off with one. I guess this is actually a request, not a question, but for one of the 2025 organizational tactics under customer satisfaction, it's improve safety and security, and partly to dovetail off of Director Laura Mitkiff's request. I would love to have more information on that particular tactic at that future work session where we talk more about safety and security. Just so maybe as an example of how these tactics are actionabilized.
Oh, yes.
So like I'm able to see the high level here from, your presentation, but I would love to also get a glimpse into what that looks like on the ground, and given that request, I wonder if that might be a good opportunity to do that.
That's a perfect segue into something I actually forgot to share, which is in the strategic plan, there are specific milestones associated with every single tactic. So it's not only the title, but we have a description, we have tactic owners, and then we have the milestones that are reported on quarterly throughout the year. And so if you take a look, the strategic plan has the organizational ones, and the ones I printed for you, or board clerk and I printed, has the divisional ones as well.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Thank you for directing me to the right spot. The other question I have was around so for the divisional tactics that are either not started or behind schedule, and you don't need to use any specific example, but obviously they're rolled forward to the next year, but how are those, and maybe this might be a question for you, General Manager, is like, how are those handled? Because I can imagine certain division goals are too audacious just from the get-go. And then it turns out, oh, life happened, and there's lessons learned there. And I imagine that there's lessons learned for whatever the reasons for that. Is there like a post-mortem usually, or how is that information used as a learning opportunity?
So something that we implemented in fiscal year 24 that we weren't doing in fiscal year 23 is we do quarterly meetings with each tactic owner and their team. And so it's an open dialogue, open communication throughout the entire process. And so we're able to know and discuss if there's an area of the tactic that is falling behind and the reason why. And so that conversation's always happening.
Are those conversations where you get all of the tactic owners into a room together, or are you like meeting with them individually?
There's Alan, David, myself, and then Kira, and then we all talk to the teams individually.
Individually, okay.
But yes,
Perfect.
yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. I don't think I have any further questions. President Espressi.
I just wanted to comment on the fact that in the 2025 organizational tactics, I feel like a lot of our feedback that we provided to General Manager Pollock is being reflected here, and I just really appreciate that. I just wanted to note kind of the responsiveness of that. And I am really interested in seeing how some of these tactics move forward, and particularly, again, just paying attention to our community value. So I'm excited for the work to come. Thank you so much for all your hard work.
Yes, thank you very much, Administrator Kidd.
Thank
Very
you.
well done.
Appreciate it.
Next, we have our General Manager's report.
Great. I just have a couple of items. So you have in front of you the Communications Division's information sheet with upcoming activities and events for you to be aware of. I do want to highlight two of them. First is Family Fun Day, which is this Saturday at the Y. So if your schedule allows, please stop by for a little while and say hello to all the employees. It should be a great afternoon. And then also in continuation of promoting the battery electric buses in the community. So we had, and I'll talk about in a minute, the ribbon cutting ceremony, but on September 6th, we're going to have a community event out here, downtown transit center, have an electric bus available for people to come in, check it out, and promote it that way. So that's from 11 to 4. So if your schedule allows, stop by, and you've all seen the electric buses, but come see riders and community members. And then I'll just wrap it up with thanking all of you for attending the ribbon cutting ceremony for our battery electric buses. So I'd like to thank Senator Merkley for being there and being our keynote speaker. He was really instrumental in securing multiple grants over multiple years to allow us to have these buses. I'd also like to thank Patricia Feeney and her project team for putting together a great event. These things just don't happen. And I'd also like to thank I'll call them the game day operations folks, the supplemental crew who were setting up and giving things out and preparing it all. And a special shout out to the facilities maintenance team who really refreshed the Kaiser Transit Center. It looked beautiful. They did painting and staining and bark dusting and cleaning up, and it looked as new as it did over 10 years ago when we opened it. So total team efforts again. And you all got to see the bus cake, but you didn't get to taste it. We brought it to work the next day, shared it with the operators, and I'll tell you, it was good. It was good. Sorry you missed that, but that was a neat little amenity to the event. Was that the hole I saw? Yeah. Oh, after, yeah, you got it here. That's right. So forgot about that. So I'll just end it there.
Great. Thank you, General Manager. Director Laura Metcalf, would you like to do your committee report? Or board report, excuse me.
You haven't heard me talk enough already tonight.
Please, bring it on.
No, so the WSBA met without me this morning, so nothing to update there. And the West Salem Neighborhood Association was supposed to meet this month. They've been on a hiatus while they reevaluate how they conduct their meetings. I've encouraged them to go hybrid and kind of broaden their base, but they're still figuring out what that looks like and what that means for them. So they were supposed to come back from a hiatus this month, and they didn't. And so I emailed Mike, and it looks like maybe September will be the new goal. So that'll be exciting for those of us in West Salem. And I would like to echo General Manager Pollock's thanks for the event at the ribbon cutting, and it was beautiful. I'd never been to the Kaiser Transit Center before, so it was a great first experience, and I thank the staff for all their efforts in making it so.
Director Carney.
Thank you, Vice President Davidson. Let's see, so I joined you all for the battery electric bus ribbon cutting earlier this month. And last week I got a call from a reporter, was that last week or the week before? A call from a reporter at the Salem Reporter to ask me about comments on the draft Metropolitan Transportation Safety Action Plan that I was on the, can't remember if it was steering or some other name for a committee that met a few times in the drafting of that document. So that is out there, and they have a few more open houses coming up. I should have the dates handy, and I'm sorry that I don't. We got an email, and I think it may be in all of your inboxes from the COG about participating in ODOT's local consultation survey, helping to get the response numbers up on that survey, which ODOT is required to report to the Federal Highway Administration. So just as somebody who spends some time with the COG and with SCATS, and in partnership with ODOT in those places, please help them get information to the Federal Highway Administration. And then finally, the SCATS Policy Committee will meet next Tuesday, the 27th. And there's a few things that I'm looking forward to talking about, and I have a little packet homework to do between now and then. But the funding shortfall policy language is coming back to the group, as well as the public engagement framework for our Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Plan. You know, the kind of things that get me pretty excited to go to a meeting. And other than that, I don't have anything to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Carney. President Hinojosa Pressy.
Thank you, Vice President Davidson. I don't have much to share. I also want to give a big kudos to the team, both the front end operational logistics side of setting up our battery electric bus event, and also like the team that helped set everything up the day of, and just all the pieces that went into it. It was, I second General Manager Pollock's comments. It was a very beautifully planned event, and it went off super well. Having been on like the back end of like the logistics of events like that, I just really appreciate all the time and effort that went into it. I appreciate how beautiful the Kaiser Transit Center was. I especially loved like the little attention to detail to tie in all the greenery with those very cute centerpieces that we had. I wish I should have taken one home. And then I also wanted to talk about going to the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments legislative gathering. I don't want to share too much because I'm sure, Vice President Davidson, that there'd be some that you want to share about it, but it was a great time to spend with some candidates for elected positions and some currently elected leaders to just discuss some of the needs that we have as a transit agency. I got to spend some time talking with a city councilor from Almsville and just discussing kind of like the growth areas that a rural kind of turning urbanized area has, especially when it comes to transportation. And yeah, that's all I have really to report. I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, President. In my report, I'll pick up where President Hinojosa Presley left off, which is the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments Legislative Gathering. This is an event that we put on typically a couple times a year. And it's an opportunity for local governments, of the 40 plus local governments that are participants in the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments over in Marion, Polk, and Yamhill County, to come together and create kind of a one-stop shop for legislators and then legislative candidates to come and talk with all of their different local elected and appointed leaders. And so we had 125 people show up. That included legislators, legislative candidates, their staff, staff from the federal delegation, as well as local government appointed and elected officials. So it was a wonderful turnout. There were a lot of conversations happening, which is exactly what we hoped would happen. We kicked off the meeting by just welcoming folks there, and then reiterating some of our regional priorities, of which Cherriots shares many of those priorities as well. And all in all, I think a really good event, and looking forward to continued collaboration amongst different local governments and also us with our both state and federal delegations. Also, the battery electric bus event, I'm just going to chime in. It was wonderful. It was seamless. It felt wonderful. It was great. No notes. The transit access was superb. All events should be held at transit centers, I think. Very easy to get there. For me, earlier, I guess last month, because I wasn't able to attend last month's board meeting, but my wife and I had an opportunity to go visit Banff, Alberta. And the reason I'm telling you all this, not to talk about what we did for our 10th wedding anniversary, but to instead talk about how their regional transit provider, very interestingly, connects to basically every location that anyone would want to go to. So we were able to take public transit to a mountain to then ride a gondola, and others were able to go to all these different hikes, and so I think a couple months ago talked about the value of whimsy in public transit and being able to access things that bring joy, as Coordinator Schmidt talked about. And so just reflecting on that experience, once again, think that to the extent that we have the resources to be able to do that is something worthwhile. Speaking of resources, the Service Enhancement Committee has been meeting monthly. We're now moving towards a bi-monthly meeting schedule because the work that we're doing is picking up. We've shared some of our thinking with the board. We were able to get your feedback, I think it was actually last month. And so we are moving ahead. We're gathering more information, getting more assistance lined up. So very, very exciting. It's a lot to do, and we're excited to do the work. So that concludes my report, and that concludes our meeting. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.